Hi everybody, welcome back to World Civilization 1 or History 111 here at Pueblo Community College, and I hope everyone's had a great week, and I know you're preparing for Exam 2. And as promised, here is a video presentation and lecture, if you will, a miniature lecture. And you'll see here it says Ancient China. And this is material that you can use in preparation for Exam 2. And if you refer to the study guide throughout this brief video presentation, you're going to be able to see exactly what I'm referring to, or you'll see a lot of those things that are on your study guide. So let's get started. Remember now, anytime during this presentation, if you need to get caught up, just hit pause and take your notes as necessary, and we'll go from there. The first slide I want to show you is actually of modern China. And really what I want you to notice here are just a couple of key factors. One, its relationship here. We obviously talked about India previously here. And of course, here is modern day China. For the United States of America, what causes us certainly some concern is China relationship here to Afghanistan and also Pakistan. You know, if you look at the size of China as well, it's a very, very large country. And of course, one of the most significant problems that China is dealing with today is actually something that isn't that new, and that is they are overpopulated. If I show you this map here, this is, as you can see here, the Qin or Qin dynasty, and you'll notice some of the particulars here. What I would want you to do is look very closely here, and you're going to see one of the significant waterways we'll be talking about, and that is the Yangtze River right here. When I look at early Chinese civilization, I do wish to point out some of the geography and climate. As I just showed you on the map, early civilization developed between two major rivers. The Yellow River, which is also sometimes known as the Huanghe, meaning China's sorrow, and the Yangtze River. The rivers flow east from the highlands in Tibet towards the flat plains, going downward there. Like the ancient Indian civilization we studied, this really is a very perfect land for the Chinese. It's very isolated. To the west, you have the Taklamakan Desert. To the southwest, you have the Himalayas. And certainly, it doesn't always serve as a natural barrier. What we see is Mongolian nomads coming out of the north. And again, if you need to take some extra time, don't forget to just hit pause on your particular player. If we look at some of the background here, I mentioned in our very first lecture about Peking Man. He was the first Paleolithic evidence of ancient China. In 1927, Peking Man was discovered, and I think this is what is most significant about this particular slide, the second point here. The first Neolithic culture was around 6500 BCE. That particular civilization developed along the Yellow River Valley, and you'll notice here they domesticated the pig and also produced black pottery on a wheel. The last Neolithic culture, called Lungshan, lived in very walled cities. Now keep in mind, this is not the Great Wall, it's just a walled city. This is probably the most interesting aspect about this particular Neolithic culture, and what I really want you to pay attention here is the fact that this Neolithic culture is far more advanced. This is pre-civilization. This is not meeting that definition of a civilization that you and I have discussed in class. Rather, this is an advanced culture and civilization, or advanced culture, I should say, long before a civilization. And look how advanced this is. This particular Neolithic culture of China may have included a abdication system of rulers, essentially choosing a leader based upon ability. That is a significant element of Chinese history that we don't see evidence of in any other cultures for thousands and thousands of years. Chai, the last leader of the Neolithic era, lived an extravagant lifestyle, and if you'll notice here, he lost his right to rule by something known as neglected husbandry. And the question I ask is, what does this mean? Well, he essentially lived without thought for his country or its people. He killed ministers who gave him advice that he disagreed with. And essentially what the neglected husbandry piece really means is that he didn't serve as the husband of his nation. He didn't take care of his family, if you will. And eventually those actions will enrage the people, and they will band together under what we call the Shang tribe. This will give rise to what we call the Shang period. The Shang period. I'll let you look at all of these notes in detail on your own, but I'll just point out a couple of things. The Shang period was around 1700 BCE. They will officially meet the definition of a civilization. Look at these two particular things. They developed bronze at an incredible or great level, and they developed a very distinct writing system, really essentially giving us the very first Chinese civilization form of writing. Okay? It's the Shang period also that gave us the mass burial system, and they also gave us something called the oracle bone. And I'll show you some photographs of an oracle bone here later, but I want you to imagine it's an early system of fortune telling. If you've ever played with a Ouija board, the oracle bone is in many ways like that. If you can imagine, they would ask the spirits a question about life or love or death or health, or those things that any of us would be asking maybe for a fortune teller. And what they would essentially be doing is taking an animal bone and heating it over fire as they ask those questions. And you would get these markings on the animal bone, and then they would read those particular characters. This is an example of an oracle bone. You'll notice here all of the different figures and cracks and stuff. This one actually came from a tortoise shell, or a turtle, if you will. And again, what they would do is heat this over fire while they would be asking those questions. I think I have a better picture here. This is a much larger image. And again, this is from the Shang Dynasty period, and this is made from a tortoise shell. After you would ask those questions, then they would take clay or dirt and rub it on top of the shell, and then you would get the outline there. The Shang ruler was not an absolute power. He had a council of the great and small. It was a bureaucratic group. You can read all of this yourself. I would just point to you the very bottom one here. They tried to balance nature through the function of yin and yang. Yin and yang. And I'm going to give you a few moments to read this particular definition here, the concept of yin and yang as created during the Shang Dynasty. Just notice that the yang are those things associated with sun and all things that are male. It's seen as active, strong, and warm. Yin are those things associated with the moon and all things that are female. It is seen as dark, weak, cold, and passive. You should be wondering right now how this really applies to our study of ancient China. What I really need you to understand here is certainly the concepts of yin and yang are still very much part of culture today, probably not as much as it was at that time, but I would also ask you to think about this particular thing. If you remember back one of our early episodes, our early classes, we talked about these famous sociologists, Margaret Mead. I would probably wonder what you thought about Margaret Mead and what she would have thought about yang and yin. Again, if you need to write some notes about this, or you want to pause and think about that particular question, just make sure you hit pause, and you can always return to this at your convenience here. The Zhou dynasty which as you can see here is 1122 BCE. You'll see the leader of the Zhou tribe overthrew the Shang tribe and began that dynasty that lasted nearly 800 years. Two significant things out of the Zhou is they created an iron-tipped plow, which truly did revolutionize farming, and they also began the process of utilizing fertilizer. They also did a better system of water and irrigation, which really allowed more crops to be grown. And what you have here is better quality food and a massive population growth. Again, I said in the first slide, that's a significant problem that China deals with today, but it's not a new problem to China as well. You'll see here that that particular dynasty, again, which lasted 800 years, commerce grew rapidly. You still have a large system where the rich become richer and the poor become poorer. I wanted to note here the peasant marriage, or marriages usually were right after a pregnancy. A lot of the Chinese, like a lot of European countries as well, always had spring festivals where boys and girls would be paired up for essentially eventual marriage in a relationship thing. Feudalism will erode the Zhou dynasty, and the Zhou dynasty will replace by what we call the Qin dynasty in 352 BCE. And again, I will let you read those at your leisure. And that takes us to our final area that I really do want to discuss in this mini lecture. And that would be the beginning of Confucian teachings. Confucius, that is his Latin name. Young Confucius was born 551 BC. He will die in 479 BC. Confucianism, or originally as it was called Chu, taught the concepts of benevolence, ritual, and propriety. Here are the basic principles of Confucianism. People can be molded and elevated by education and good example of superiors. A good example of this would be your parents should be the best role models for you. They should establish a good example for you. If they want you to follow and do the right thing, they in turn should be doing the right thing. You also see the importance here of education. If you have education and you have good modeling or examples before you, then people will want to do what is morally right. And that will preserve the harmony of society. This is an important element of Confucianism as well. Force and threats are ineffective controls of people. Once again, think about that. Force and threats are ineffective controls of people. This is what Confucius would tell you. What drives people are their inner values. Their inner values. Follow the ideas of Lai and Ren. Lai is the outward practice of doing the right thing. Ren is the inner attitude of being humane, loving, and good. Again, just another reminder, you can always push pause on your player and make those notes or go back and hit the repeat here. Okay? So let me just go back and hit this again. Force and threats are ineffective controls of people under Confucianism. At least that is the idea. Inner values is what drives you to do the right thing. Lai and Ren are the two concepts that can be exercised. Again, Lai is the outward practice of doing the right thing. Ren is the inner attitude of being humane, loving, and good. We pronounce this xiao, being dutiful to older people. There's an immense amount of ancestor worship and deep respect for elders in Chinese culture. And one of those good examples there that we're seeing here is what we call the various gods here, the hearth, stove, or kitchen gods. Now, in traditional times, a young man, when he left his home, he would take coals from his parents' fireplace to his new home, and that would be a way to invite his ancestral gods into his home. Confucianism will become the state religion of China until the end of the 20th century. It's discarded now among Chinese liberals as being an obstacle to modernization of China. If we were in class together, I would ask you to answer this question, but I would just ask for you to think about that on your own at this time. You won't be expected to answer this on your exam. As I promised, it was a short little brief lecture, and I just wanted to make sure that you got that information. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email through D2L, and I will be quick. I will try to answer it as quickly as possible. And good luck. I will see you on Friday for exam 2. Bye-bye.